we're here today to talk about how you can choose to have more resilience. If you're somebody who struggles with figuring out how to bounce back or get through some challenging things, we're talking about that today. And my guest today is Chris Hart, and was known, I guess, as Technical Sergeant Hart, retired, and you've moved on. He went through some civilian jobs and then landed on being a performance driving instructor. And that's how we met. And so we're going to be touching on his story today. And I'm Erica, host of Powered by Joy podcast. And if you are someone who struggles with feeling stuck, frustrated, bored, just feel like you can't make change in your life, we're talking about different ways to do that here so that we have more joy, more happiness, and feel like we can make change in our lives. So welcome. So we're going to dive right in to questions here. And I was just wanting to share how we met recently. I had the amazing experience. So I don't know, do you want to share like your experience of us meeting, or I can jump in and share?
Oh, I can. I tell you what, we'll do both of them. Why don't you tell me
Okay.
yours, and I'll tell you mine.
Okay. All right. So I got to have the joyful experience of going to the Corvette, the Ron Fellows Corvette School, the Z06 one, down in Nevada. And I was super nervous. Like, I get really wound up about getting in my head about things. And I was super nervous that day. And I haven't had as much time on the track in a car recently. And this was new. And so I was scared I was going to screw up somehow. And anyway, so I was really wound up. And so when we finally got out in the cars and we're like getting ready to go on the track, you were my first instructor, and you were just so reassuring and calming. And you had us pause and just like take a breath over the radio when you're like, okay, everybody talk, I want you to stop and take a breath in. I was like, whoa, what? How? I want you to look around and have some gratitude for like the beautiful mountains and what you're doing, the beautiful car you're in and stuff. And I just thought, oh, I so needed that. Like I needed it, like grounded me in, and was like, okay, this is not life or death. Like I'm out here playing, having fun, get over this. Like, and just was able to, so you were very reassuring, and it just like set my mindset completely different. I was like, thank you, whoever sent him to be my first instructor, because it helped me like, go into the experience. So that was my experience, was just like immediately feeling this connection, or, you were, once we started talking a couple times too, is like, I could feel that you are somebody who lives from your heart. And that definitely, when I found out what your last name was, like, of course, that totally makes sense. So yeah, that was my initial experience of meeting you down there at the school, which was an awesome experience.
Yeah, I love hearing you say that. What I'm actually pushing through and trying to help everybody remember in the moment, is actually being captured. Because I think you might have heard that term, drinking through a fire hose, because there's so much information coming at you day one over there. So, these Corvette Owner School programs like this, what's amazing about them is, every 2 days, it's a new school with new people that are ambitious, love these cars, excited about the experience, nervous, right? All those emotions coming in. And I get to experience that with you guys. And I love being able to kind of calm things down, like center everybody, and then just try to progress everyone, make them understand it's an educational mindset. We're trying to kind of reset everybody and their experiences and just push them onto our experience, and do it in the best way we can. And obviously I'm kind of new over there. This is a dream job for me. And I've been through a lot of things in life that got me to this point. So I like to remember that and try to get everybody else to kind of, take that in for a moment, I guess, and embrace it. And hopefully it recenters people like it did with you.
Yeah, I was like, yes, that is, for me, like I've been to a lot of different things in motorsports, and I've never had anyone be like, okay, let's just take a minute and pause, just like take a breath, get present.
Yeah.
It was like, it was a blessing for me, because I was like, I needed it. So I was like, there are people out there in this hobby or in this interest or in this field, even in motorsports, that, think about being present and like enjoying and, what they're experiencing, because not everyone gets the opportunity to do it. So it's like, don't ruin this for yourself by being so wound up about it that you're not like
Really.
here for it. So I'm really good at doing that. Sometimes I get so far up in my head that I'm like, "Ah," and then later I'm like, why did I do that?
Well, I
So
know I could definitely tell, and you're trying to, take it all in and learn it as quickly as you could. You had Mitch running around watching PDR videos and giving you instant pointers and tips. Coach Mitch over there is awesome. I
yeah.
love seeing the enthusiasm in a couple doing that because, Jessica, my fiance, that's the reason we have two Corvettes behind us, right? She's very
Yeah.
passionate about this stuff and does track days, and so does my son. And it's an absolute blessing, been a dream come true. Something I've always thought would be an ideal situation because I think partners that play together have a way better chance of staying together. You know what I mean? So
I agree. Like, it gives you all these bonding memories and ways to connect and talk. And it's not about like, did you let the dog out or did someone get the groceries or who paid the bills? It's like having purposeful time together where you're just playing, I think is a huge piece of why we work so well together. And yeah, I think it's an important piece of relationships is to find something that you can do like that together. And then I have a whole thought process on that. Like when you're doing things that push you out of your comfort zone, right? And you're learning together and purposely choosing new experiences, it's so bonding. Like you get that hit of adrenaline mixed in, like all of that really mixes to be a good bonding agent, with your partner for sure.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's always super cool to see. We get so many different types of situations. Kind of, some are like yours, some are like, in some cases, I've seen it even be, with one lady in particular, she was terminal stage 4 with breast cancer, and it was her dying wish to, get a new Corvette and come to this school, and she was here on a ventilator, and it was, one of the most heart wrenching moments I've ever experienced. Literally cried in the car with a lady, and had one of the
Oh my
coolest and
gosh.
most surreal moments. And we took her one-on-one on a course just to do all this, and the weather, the scenery, the backdrop, nothing. It couldn't have been more serene. It felt like you're in that final scene of a movie. They're trying to break
Mm.
your heart down. Oh gosh, I'm already getting messed up thinking about it. But
Whew. Well,
so
I thought we would, we'll touch on it more later about like the motorsports because I think that that can be a piece of,
yeah,
like it's amazing that that is something that she desired and then it made it happen somehow. And I think that it is such an important part of life to like find that thing. And so being able to be a part of that when you're in your gifts or when you have the courage to go and pursue a job that matches your passions and then you get opportunities to be present for something like that, like how incredible is that to have the opportunity to be present for someone's moment in life like that? That is a huge moment for her. So um, I feel like it creates so much opportunity when we put ourselves in places where we're doing things that we're passionate and in a place of joy. It opens up all these cool connections and opportunities and memories. And so it's an important piece of the puzzle. So
oh,
I love
absolutely.
that. Yeah. Well, I'm going to dive in and just kind of ask you what, if you wanted to share a little bit more of your backstory here and going back and just telling, you could maybe just make it high level, but just like what led you down the path. You did have, were you in the military right out of high school or like what led you there?
Yeah, sure. Um, so I bounced around. My parents split when I was about 6, so I hopped around from the LA area, Southern California, right by LAX, and my mom remarried and moved up to Eureka, California, way up north, and it was more like ranch style living with animals and all that kind of stuff there. So I had this pretty cool dynamic that I definitely wasn't sure of at first, but embraced, and then just I've always had this I don't know, super adventurous, always wanting to learn, maybe kind of ADHD type of deal where I always want to do something different, learn something else, be, a multi-tool, right? So you can be
Hmm.
relatable. You can choose any path essentially. And so every opportunity I had to do something new, I would. And so that also meant going back and forth from house to house a lot. And at my mom's house up in Eureka, my stepdad had this little store. It was right next to the recruiting offices. So, growing up in my teens and whatnot, I was a skateboarder, and I'd always go out and like skateboard on this red curb ledge that was right next to the recruiting offices and whatnot. And well, uh, this Air Force guy that was there always looked sharp. Had a nice car, uh, beautiful family. Just looked and presented well. And then you see all the other branches, and the only other one that looked suitable was the Marines. Those guys look pretty squared away, but the Army guys, it just seemed like they would always have their people that were on the way out getting kicked out, and they'd send them over there for extra duty, and they would just look terrible. Outside chain smoking, just like not fitting the images. So I would like analyze and watch this, and then just suddenly slowly became friends with the Air Force guy because he was a skateboarder too, right? Oddly. And next thing you know, I'm volunteering to help him out and go on like little recruiting missions and seeing bases. And he basically groomed me. And I signed up when I was 17. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to get away, travel, explore. I felt like it was the best case scenario was to do that for me after what I saw. So I had mom sign a waiver. I went as quick as I could, and I even took a job I wasn't expecting to take right off the bat just so I could go. But that's how that led me into it. And from there, my biggest thing too is like I wanted to go in so that I had a steady job so I could get a car loan and so I could start doing track stuff. I was doing it in high school and high school auto shops. I was working multiple jobs just to pay for gas to go to the street races and stuff like that. Um,
Nice.
I was very much addicted as a little kid. My dad brought me up on all the vehicles and all that. But amongst that childhood, though, getting toggled back and forth from parents and not getting along with either step parents, I had to really learn to I guess be independent, step up, and also, I think that's when I started learning about resiliency, to be honest, because both my step parents, without seeing anything too negative about them, they made things really tough. We'll just leave it at that.
Sure.
I think neither one of them wanted the kids with the partner, basically. So, and I was the wild child. There was riding BMX, dirt bikes, doing the fast cars, breaking stuff all the time. But I'd work and fix it and clean it and do my everything I could to make it redeem the stuff that I broke. But I had to learn resiliency. I think pretty quick with all, especially because I got kicked out this moment I graduated high school, and stepdad basically said, "Here's $200, title to our crappy little 1983 Lincoln Continental. I know you're signed up for the Air Force. You got a couple months. Go figure it out, And yeah, so that led me on to a wild little road trip. But the military thing took me all over the world, and everywhere I went, I was doing car stuff, meeting new car friends, doing local events in every one of these areas. So, and I've stayed relevant with all that throughout the years, and that's been the one thing that's held me together because I kept volunteering to deploy and go out, and I got invaded. Iraq in 2003 was right behind the 1st Infantry going in there. I was a water and MRA supplier. I wasn't, I wasn't out there as infantry or nothing like that. I was an Air Force guy, but volunteered to do all that. And I would do all these deployments. I ended up doing 7 of them all together so that I could make extra money, come home and modify my cars, because that was the one thing that kind of kept me, I don't know, sane, I guess, was doing all the vehicle stuff. Sometimes you can put resiliency into a hobby too, or a facet of life that, kind of just puts you in a different realm where you can find so much passion and enthusiasm about it that it drives you to be better so that you can do more of your passion,
Mm-hmm. So
and
it
I feel
makes you
like
willing to do things that you wouldn't necessarily choose to do otherwise.
absolutely. But I've definitely noticed those. I've gone through all that, and I volunteered to be with Honor Guard. And then next thing you know, I became a deployment manager. Then it was mortuary affairs, additional duties added on that I volunteered to do because it needed to be done. And then it was, a variety of different things that put me in some situations where I was basically out of career field, with special ops group, going out and doing a bunch of different missions. And within all that is recovering, and that's, can be anything from bodies to parts and everything else. So, really tough to kind of get yourself, centered after dealing with all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always lose myself in motorsports, and that's, or my son, and building him up, and the trick is finding the outlet. Because once I did all this and came back, and I also got hurt on a couple different deployments as well, started becoming the trainer for everybody when they came back from deployments, which led me into a special duty to actually be a resiliency NCO for the whole wing when I was stationed out in Hawaii. And we set up, it was a complete down day. So basically people just went to work for like an hour or two to do whatever they needed to do. And then everybody came out to this park area, and we had a bunch of, coordinated a whole bunch of people with really good stories and stuff to, come out there and try to inspire people, and mixed them in with, interactive type of games and team building exercises and all sorts of different stuff like that. And they ended it on the note with, the leadership at command, talking about embracing your new people, taking them under your wing, show them the way, don't haze, just be receptive to everybody's different unique situations and what brings them down. Don't just shrug it off and, brush things aside, try to be more, I don't know, just, kind of bonded with everybody around and sensitive to what they have going on. Because if you do that, your team will ultimately become much better, So yeah, I got to do some really cool experiences with that. And I tell you what, if I didn't get to have those experiences, there was a few, low points after retiring the Air Force, trying to find my way, that I really struggled and was really at that rock bottom, and sold everything, got rid of everything. And was just lost. It was like, how do I restart? I'm sitting like on the tailgate of a mountain edge, just, figuring out what, you get all those different thoughts going through your head, obviously.
Yeah.
Especially when, there's times of be quiet or alone, or didn't have my son with me. My biggest issue I think I felt was that loss of family with the military, that sense of pride and establishment of what I'd earned, through everybody I worked around. And it's really hard to find that in the civilian world after you get out. And I really struggled with that at a lot of different places. And thankfully, for the most part, this new place, I mean, it's changed things for me dramatically. It's getting to see, so many different people like yourself and your husband come through and all the unique experiences you guys have gone through, and other people, it's a very spread out demographic of these people that come to the new job. And it inspires me to continuously be better, because you see so many people, with serious health issues coming through, still doing it. You know what I mean? Just lost a fellow racer friend of ours a couple of days ago, named Tom Barry. He's been a legend over 30 years in SCCA, autocross world, and nationals. Same thing with his daughters, who were actually pretty close with one of them, and raced with him quite a bit. And he was racing up until, a couple months before he passed. Would continue to show up. We'd always do prayers and push things through. And, those moments really kind of grounded everybody and made that whole autocross family that was in the realm of SoCal and then here in Nevada so tight because of it. But yeah, we just lost him, and, we drove out to California to see his daughter, and, kind of just talk about it all. And man, it's wild what, when you find something that, and this is the hard part, is finding something. When you find something like I found, that how it brings people together. And ultimately, I think the biggest thing is how can you be resilient without having to go through the hard stuff? And I don't think you can, so it's that's something I was explaining to my son. It's like, man, you're not going to get it until things get so hard on you and you pull through that you'll change the way you are. You'll be humbled. You won't be so self-centered, you know.
Hmm.
I hate that you have to go through this stuff because nobody takes anything in until it like really strikes them to their core.
Yeah.
And I know I just kind of like went around in a whole bunch of areas. I hope I hit everything you're
No,
looking for.
yeah, no, that's totally everything you said makes sense. Unfortunately, we don't usually learn a lot from being in times of ease and things going perfect and well. That's not where the growth comes from. And, it's just like weight training. You don't get muscles from sitting on the couch eating bonbons, right? You got to
Unless
challenge
you got
and
dumbbells there with you, so
there's
you
not,
can
yeah,
get that.
right.
I literally had
Yeah.
to do that. You know, I lost the ability to really use my legs a couple of times from very bad nerve issues before I had to get back surgery, and then also once after. And I was so annoyed about losing my everything, that I would bring weights and stuff at the couch because even though I couldn't really do anything with the legs, I would just sit there and do all this upper body stuff, to I don't know, just to get some kind of a little frustration out in some ways, but
Yeah.
you know,
That's
you
I
can't do
found
it.
that
You can't be at the couch and work out.
you can. You're right. You're right. My bad. I think that for me, I've learned that I used to work out for different reasons, like for how I looked and I wanted to stay a certain size and all the things. And then now it has changed completely in that there's two things. One, I want to be fit and have vitality so I can do my hobbies. And that requires me to exercise. And then number two, like I find that if I'm not doing it if I miss, like I can get away with 3 days and it's like the fourth day, like a cloud moves in over my head and I just don't cope with anything near as well. So like I have to physically do something that pushes me to like exertion so that I can move. I just realized that it's kind of my therapy to like deal with life is I got to do something like that where it pushes me. And if I don't get it regularly, then I'm just like, I can just tell right away. Fourth day, I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
know what's happening here. I gotta
absolutely.
exercise again. So it's
It is.
changed a lot.
I know it. It's funny how things and your workouts change too we get older here. It's
Yes.
and then work around
I
injuries and everything else. Yeah,
yes,
it
that's
makes
true.
you have to have a better perspective, like
Mhm.
if you want to change, anyways.
Yes. And I think for me too, it's like I've had some neck and back issues and trying to still start and I had to start with like little 3-pound dumbbells
Mm.
and it felt so pathetic. But it was like I had to start somewhere because I knew I needed to feel better and that was the only thing I could, so it was like baby steps, 8 reps at 3 pounds, woohoo. But I think we got to start somewhere when we're stuck, because you're not going to just
Yeah.
change thinking about it. You got to start somewhere. I was just going to ask you, like, if you were able to talk to like your younger self and give them one or two pieces of advice, like for moving through life and being able to be resilient or kind of learn and move through things that are challenging in life, what would those be?
Like what age of myself? I need a number.
You need a number. Okay, let's say your 18-year-old self.
My 18-year-old self. Okay, so
Yeah.
what would I tell him to to be
What
resilient?
advice would you give them? Yeah, just towards like, or just knowing what you do now, like what would be the advice you would give them to move through their earlier 20s and what they had coming?
I would say, um, the biggest thing is just I made a lot of like quick and emotional and like rash decisions and just would 200% go with them. I was very sporadic and random, which is good in a lot of ways, but in some aspects, when it comes to say job, financials, relationships, be more patient. try to be more understanding, try to, see things through, you know, with experienced eyes, even if you don't have them. I don't know if that makes any sense. I mean, the best thing is like when you're around people that experience things and you're young. A lot of people don't like to ask those older people what they've gone through, what they've experienced, how they handled things until they're in those situations. I encourage them to ask other people that have gone through stuff. Um, Actually care, figure out what they did. And the more you ask and find those questions out, the more questions you'll have, but the more you're going to learn really fast, from investments to property purchases to relationship advice to, well, just about anything, right? Because if you're asking questions, you're inquiring to gain knowledge somehow or another. And most people, like me in particular, when I was really young, I was, just kind of, I don't know, just I didn't really ask those questions, I guess, too much until something happened for me to ask those questions, right? Until I was in a moment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's so I'd say just try to always put yourself in a learning mode. Don't stay stagnant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see how that would be powerful. Having, I have, we, between Mitch and I, we have 4 grown sons. And I definitely think there is, and I did this too, even as a girl, but like, I think there's a lack of, you're like, I got this. Like, there's a confidence in yourself, maybe, or, like you said, you just make those decisions and go. So I'm like, okay, at what level do you go? Oh, you might think of this, or how do they learn if you are trying to always like give them advice to like, oh, don't go down that path. And so there's definitely that, the lesson of like, as a parent of adult kids, like letting them ask for what the guidance they need, you know, and not trying to insert it when it's not asked for. That's another facet of it. But I do wish I was smart enough to seek more knowledge when I was younger as well, where I, just asked for opinions or wisdom, having that curiosity when I'm around people that maybe know a little bit more about life.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I know I definitely picked that up more, as things started happening, right? And especially, the older you get and the more you're doing things, the more stuff happens. And, I think that's what accelerated me so quick in so many different avenues. And it's, one of the things I keep encouraging my kid is, to always be trying to strive for something else. And, um, he's struggling a little bit trying to find what that something else is, and a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of my military friends, my age, I'm 42, we're all ingrained with, if you get in when you're 18, retired 20 years, you're 38 and then you're retired. Well, man, like I feel like everything was just a learning curve up until that point, and the best phase of your life is in your 40s and 50s. And I'm seeing that now. But I definitely had a phase where I just tried to chill out and not do too much at all. And that was the worst version of myself I've ever seen.
Mm.
You get in your head terribly. You start just analyzing, watching everybody else doing all this stuff while you're just kind of, the time's passing by and you're just chilling. The body starts falling apart. You can't do things as much unless you're incredibly active. And I kept going through these phases where I'd be incredibly active and healthy, and then something would happen and I'd get re-injured and could barely walk again, and had to rehab. So every time I would get hurt, that's when I would go into my really dark places. And then, well, naturally, with a lot of the medications VA likes to tend to throw to us, they turn you into a bit of a zombie, and can easily get hooked on some of those things. And I had a phase where I was definitely just trying to medicate myself to get through the agony, and just sleeping away the time. And, the absolute worst versions of myself. I was just looking at some of those pictures today, just like, just it looked terrible. It looked swollen,
Mm-hmm.
just look like my soul had been kind of sucked away, and I was just not really there. And that's one of the hardest things I noticed with my veteran friends too, because we all do a lot. We were very active, and it wears on you afterwards. And when they start getting prescribed all this stuff, and they're told to take it, and they start taking it all instead of trying to use natural remedies, or doing more stretching, or whatever it is to try to aid the body. A lot of people just kind of give into the medication, and that's all I need to do to feel better. And then they get stuck in a rut where they're just playing games or watching movies, and until they burn themselves out, and then they're a terrible version of themselves. And it's really hard to pull out of that, because you have to put in, depending on how long, like if I had a phase for like 3 to 6 months or something like that at one point. And during that phase, I think it took me 3 times that, like if it was a 6-month phase, I think it took me like 3 times that or more to really recover myself with diet, exercise, going back after hobbies, doing everything else. Like the longer you sit around and don't do anything to make your life better, it gets 3x, 4x harder. The longer you wait. So that's a little thing I would highly suggest. Is don't just chill out. Even if you're hurt and not able to do much, don't just give up. Continue to find something you can do.
Yeah, like lift weights from the couch.
Right. Yep.
Even if it's that, even if it's 3 pounds or something, it still counts. Did you have
Sometimes
anybody? Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, I was gonna say sometimes I'd rep the tacos. I love tacos. So you get a bunch of tacos, get a couple arm pumps out of those before you need it.
Yeah, that's my kind of reps, the tacos. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Did you feel like there was anybody in particular that maybe mentored you, or that you kind of modeled you, or like when you were in spots like that, was there anybody that like you were watching, or mentored you, or they may not have known it? Like there's people I follow that, you know, um, that are
Yeah.
public figures. Did you have any of that to follow?
Oh, absolutely. So the one of the things I learned, I guess in my younger career, when I was starting to go through these like leadership programs to become a sergeant or an NCO, non-commissioned officer in the Air Force, they put you through all these leadership courses and try to basically grow you, mold you. And the biggest thing I took away from a prior chief master sergeant I had, which is the highest enlisted rank, he was like, don't just find one mentor or two mentors, right? Or just gain information from those people. You're really limiting yourself. He's like, ask questions with anybody that you see that is sharp, doing something that's like, wow. Talk to those people. Find those people that are striving, that are dedicated, that are passionate. See what it is they're doing. Ask them questions, and then take little bits and pieces from all of them to formulate the best version of yourself. So for me, it's not just a couple people. It's a complete variety over time and experience and life. That I've taken all these different anecdotes from. But as far as public figures and stuff, I mean, Travis Pastrana has been an influence for me. I've grown up watching him. We're like about the same age. He's gone through some hard stuff with really bad injuries, worse than mine. And recovered from it and is still doing motorsports and biking. And Ken Block is another one of them. Rest in peace there. Of course, motorsports figures, right? But as much as I don't tell my dad, he's the reason I got into all this stuff. So he's largely responsible. And then also my fiance, her grandfather, was also an inspirational, gentleman to me. He just passed last summer as well. Had some really good talks with him. I admire anybody that's completely taken themselves from nothing to something, and I love finding out those processes, because I've always wanted to try to achieve the best version of myself, that I could be. So yeah, just bits and pieces from a lot of different people, a few specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think that makes sense, because you're going to be different than that person. So just like giving yourself permission to like not do everything they're doing, but be like, you know what, that piece of what they're doing works for me. That makes sense for me. Is effective way to make some changes because it can be little stuff. And I, same thing. I think I have a lot of curiosity. And for me, it's like if I'm not learning something, I start to get restless. So
Yeah.
I think that's part of my love of motorsports is that you can always learn and improve. There's always a challenge to it. And it's a space where there's so much opportunity for growth there too. And I found that like a lot of the lessons you learn are like a great metaphor for life stuff that goes on. And so thinking about like the very last thing that I was struggling with was sitting there and I realized it was my eyes and that I wasn't looking far enough ahead on the track. I was looking like right where I was the next immediate
Yeah.
thing. And I know better, but I was not doing that and just remembering the value of like looking ahead, scanning to the future, and then staying present, like that we need to be doing that in our life. It's like, I know this, like, but
Yeah. It's very
everything
relative.
goes faster and smoother when you do that reflection time and you're looking ahead like, yeah, okay. So I love how like the specifics of like using your eyes, where are you looking at? There's so many metaphors that I love about motorsports for life.
Yeah, no, it can definitely correlate. I mean, if you look through, the turns, like you look through, the next step in life and where you're trying to go, you know what I mean? It'll always make you, try to do stepping stones to get there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's deeper than just that one sentence. It's funny that you say that. It's a good analogy. A good look at it.
Yeah. I, the beginning of my podcast, I did ones on like breaking, even just like boundaries and like trusting yourself and all of it. There's just so many correlations that I like, even I feel like the presence you have to have when you're out on the track and the concentration, like teaching you how to be so present is something that you can take, off of the track as well. And it's also been a huge confidence builder for me personally. I don't know if that, for you, I feel like, okay, if I can go do this thing that scares the crap out of me uh, here, and I can conquer my fear and push myself. Because trust me, the first time I went out, I literally I did a Tony Robbins event in person, like way back, and they like have you walk on fire, and they teach you like how to like get in a state, to be able to make yourself do it. And so I still to this day, like I hit my chest and say yes, and to like because my body knows because I've done it so much. So the first time I got out on the track on the motorcycle, I was hiding between the pit entrance and the truck with the door open. And I'm like, yes, yes. Because
Yeah.
I was like so scared. I was like shaking. And I was like, okay, if I can walk on fire, I can get on the track. But I've used it many times. And I actually was in the car. I turned off the PDR and I did it because I was so nervous in the car. Because but it works for me, like, because now my body knows, like, when I do that motion, like, my body goes, oh, we're doing a thing. We're going to,
Yeah.
it reacts and makes me get into a certain state. So
Yeah. I smack
I
myself
know
in the
that.
face.
Yeah. What do you do?
I smack myself in the face. I'm like, come on,
Like,
wow, get with it. What are you doing? I'm a little abusive myself. I'm well, yeah, I don't know. It's honestly, it's a bit of a problem sometimes. But I think it's also something that's got me, to the stepping stones and where I'm at is by being hard on myself, and not letting myself slack off too much. But it can be a really fine line to find that balance of self-destruction too.
Yeah. So maybe you should try coming up with another a power move instead of being like, you can do this.
You know, yeah, you got to find something.
Yeah, you're gonna have to make a new move that will feel a little bit more encouraging. So let's see. I wanted to make
Sometimes
sure
just going somewhere just to yell at the top of your lungs is sometimes the best thing you can do. Just
Oh yeah.
yeah, just as loud as
Yes.
you can.
Yes. Yeah. So I
Yeah,
feel
let
like I
that
can
inner
do that.
lion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like I can do that when I have the windows up and I'm not around other people, but when we're certain circumstances, I'm like, I can't do that, and I really need that right now. So, but I think when you do stuff like that and you overcome your fear, then like when you're doing other things, like for me, I was, did real estate forever, and like I stopped getting nervous about getting on going to a listing appointment, and talking to someone to be like, "Pff, like if I can go do this, like I'm not going to be intimidated or scared, like it somehow gave me confidence in my work life too, that I was going over here and doing these things that felt hard or challenging, then I can totally go in here and nail this listing appointment and connect with these people. So it helped me in all sorts of areas of my life. And um, so, do you think I'm kind of jumping over to the motorsports stuff because we kind of went there? But do you feel like that has been, it seems like you're sharing that it's been a huge motivator for you um, to pull through? So, is that something that, what do you feel like it has brought to you besides just being that motivator? Is there other things that it has,
Yeah.
other ways you've benefited from it, is what I was trying to ask.
So the best friends I've had in my life and the best friends I still have in my life that uh, really incredible. They've all been through motorsports. Like it's one of the crazy things about motorsports is you get people from all walks of life and different jobs, different parts of the world, and they all have this one common passion and connection and love learning and pushing each other and competing against one another, and it brings people together like I've never experienced or seen before. So I have a huge motorsports family, because every the 5 bases I went to during my career. I made friends in the local community and local racetracks. I've traveled to other events, and I love making friends. I'm kind of a social guy. I see something that see somebody doing something that's like, whoa, I want to go talk to them. Want to learn from it. And yeah, that's all been a huge aspect. My best friend Chris Gardner, who I met him in my first duty station, and was cruising out in Sacramento, California in the early 2000s. Had like the coolest car scene. So from Highway 50 to Highway 80 on Sunrise Boulevard, it was nothing but a cruise strip. And I don't know how long that strip is between them highways. It's pretty long though. And there's an In-N-Out burger on either side, and those would be like the big hangouts for like the highway racing guys, and But over the Sacramento River, when everybody would try to line up with people so that when they went over the bridge, they could race. And I went out there and just, actually got my butt whooped by a couple Camaros. And, I couldn't, at the time I couldn't afford one. I was in an older Mustang GT. It was a fun car, but, it was all I could afford at the time because I was trying to save up to get like a Trans Am Camaro or ultimately Corvette. But, pull over the In-N-Out, and then, it was them, they weren't being rude about it. Like, oh man, that was fun. Maybe, it's like, what are you going to do to, not lose so bad next time? Like funny bantering, but it turned into friendships. And next thing you know, I ended up being a roommate with this guy's like pretty much the guy who does all the work on all the cars for the NorCal LS1 foreign boards, which was for Camaros, Firebirds, and Corvettes. And he was, a real popular guy amongst everybody because he do all this work for him. Next thing you know, it's like I got to know everybody. I got to learn from him, and sadly, he passed away. Had a pancreatic issue, but every time I go somewhere or do an event, like the first big race, I built a streetcar and went from Florida to Tennessee, drove it there, raced, placed, and then drove it home. And him and one of our other buddies, Mike Hall, they came out to support me in Tennessee. And it was one of the times of my life, first time I'd ever done a big race event. This was in 2007. And this dude's with me in my head everywhere I go at every race event. And so is my other best friend who got me into Ducatis, and he sadly passed away a few years ago as well. His motorcycle is the one I hear in the garage. Very sentimental dude, and every time I ride that bike, it's my buddies in my ear. Every time I go to a racing event, my buddies are in my ear. But I have a whole bunch of people now over the last 8 years. I've gotten really hard into the motorsports with Optimum Battery Search for the Ultimate Streetcar Challenge. I felt like that was something I always wanted to do, as a televised race series that was like mixed martial arts and car racing, and the baddest street cars that are street legal. And I got heavily involved in that, and they've taken me in the last 5 years. Even when I wasn't racing, they brought me on board with them every time they're in Vegas, and got to be a design and engineering judge with them to stay relevant and be a part of it and learn from everybody every year. And it's grown in some incredible friendships and opportunities. And I got so involved with the motorsports aspect and doing as many track days as I could afford, that I was like, how can I find my own way in this realm? And what do I love the most, and what would keep me the most happy? And driving is really it. But most instructing jobs and things like that, well, you got to have a bigger racing background. You have to have a lot of experience. So I just made sure that I got as much as I could over the last 8 years, including went back to college and got another degree, using my GI build, just to put myself in an education mindset again. And I knew I didn't want a right seat. Like most places, they're like car rental places you'll go to, and you'll sit in the right seat with them, and you're not driving, and you're putting yourself in a risky situation every single time, with people with zero experience in an incredibly fast car. So I found out about, obviously Spring Mountain. Ron Fellows did some track days out there, and then I had a friend of ours, Hondo Miller, who took us out. He's a track member there, and we got to have the coolest moment ever at sunset on the East track, same one you were at. And he brought several of his cars. My fiance and my son came, and we all got to do autocross, and then went over there and did that. And it was, my fiance's first time on a road course with her Corvette, this Grand Sport that's no, right here, this one. And that was when it was basically, stock, and that's what kind of, evolved the car and what it is, because she got that experience. It was like tumbleweeds coming across the track, this epic sunrise, and we're just doing laps until the car gets too hot, just having a blast out there, trying different stuff. And everybody was like absolute cloud nine. We were just all sitting there like, how good is life? And, he's a bit of a religious guy too, and we did a little prayer afterwards, and it was an incredible moment. I'm like, man, I need to. Honda's like, you need to try to see about maybe trying to work here. You'd be perfect for this. And then another buddy of mine, Mike Revere, who's done like every class at Spring Mountain. I race with him all the time, and he's like, dude, you'd be perfect for this. And then a few other people as well. They all wrote these like recommendation letters, told me like, you should try to go out there. And then we started scouting it, realized we could actually buy a property we could have our horse at and have space, and not be in a smaller home and outside of Vegas area. So it was kind of like a fresh start for us to come over here, get a property with some acreage and a shop, and, be 10, 15 minutes from work. And I'm working at a racetrack, I'm driving, my favorite cars every single day. I'm getting new students that are passionate about this every 2 days. Like, you have to stay fresh in that realm. And we rotate racetracks every 2 days too. So I'll go, to different courses. So it always changes. And that's something I need. So it keeps me fresh all the time, and it keeps me around people that are very like-minded with me. And yeah, so I'm very passionate, and I'm just feel like incredibly blessed to be here, doing this as a job. And getting to meet people like yourself, and I make friends in every class, and this is another thing that rolls into your other question. Every time I have these new classes, I make new friends because of these common interests. And you start ending up having friends for just about every different type of thing in life. You need a doctor to get some insight from. I now have a few that I've met through the classes. If I want to go do track days in the Northwest, I know who to talk to, right?
Exactly. On thinking about the benefits, I think that's a huge piece too. Is like when you're doing something you're passionate about, and for us, being motorsports, like for me, it has been the family, the friendships that have come from that, and the connection with other people. And I love connecting with people that are like, you're out there trying and you can come off and like, okay, I tried this, and there's just this desire to like help each other get faster, and like, oh, did you try this? Or, I noticed in this corner I kept catching up to you, or, whatever. And I love the um just the desire to help each other grow and like support each other, but yet you're kind of lightly competing as well in your mind, when it's like the casual track days. But like that for me is a huge benefit too. Like I just feel like every time we go do anything at the track, we meet new people and make more friends, or we get to spend time with, people that have become family, to us. And I'm super thankful for that, because I didn't know that was going to come out of us doing these hobbies together. And I know some people are like, cars and things, money don't bring you happiness or whatever. But I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, because like for us, when we got our Shelby and started doing things and events and classes and track days, like we have so many cool memories and experiences and knowledge, and there's so much stuff that has changed in our life, and it's all been good. And it wasn't just based on driving a cool car. It was like having all these connections and experiences and bonding moments with people and building a family. And so I felt like there's so much more to it that is so beneficial to have in your life. So do you have any tips for someone who I like to call is moto curious, or they're trying to find something like this to kind of dip their toes in, if they're like, I might like that? Any tips on how to start?
I mean, yeah. First is, obviously you got to do your due diligence to be able to get a car, or, and unless you're somebody who, has one that, is passed down. But no matter what it is, the base level to start off at is always going to be autocross, in my opinion. That's where I got my start at. It's what I'm most passionate about, because it's a lot more affordable than doing all the road racing stuff. Less hard on the car. But I think that's the biggest thing, is you got to get yourself to an event, as long as you got a car that's licensed, registered, and you can take it over to an autocross event, and they'll put you in a class, and you just have to learn to maneuver, fast in the parking lot around cones, and it forces you to read ahead too, and really, plan everything. But they have novice programs, like here in the Las Vegas region. Two of our instructors at Ron Fellows are also volunteer instructors for newbies at the Sports Car Club of America for the autocross stuff. And they take people in, and show them how to do this. And then the next thing you know, it becomes a passion, becomes a friend group, and then everybody's pushing and bonding. And as they watch all these other people with all sorts of different cars out there, everything to go-karts and modified stuff, to Corvettes, and Mustangs, but it was literally everything, from literally everything. So you can go out there and just be a part of it. And that's the first step. You go out there, you see the variety of stuff and what people are doing, and it just engages the mind if you're into this stuff. And then that visceral feeling, though, that feeling of speed and being on the edge, and sometimes out of control, right? It's a fun way to just kind of get lost in the moment, be in that flow state, if you will, right? Everything else kind of just goes out of sight, out of mind, because you're just, feeling all these different things that are, giving you excitement or happiness, or maybe a little bit scared, like, if the truth is, with this stuff, if you don't scare yourself, you're not going fast enough.
Yes, my sign that I'm pushing my limit is I get like cotton mouth because I'm so nervous that I'm like, I know I'm pushing my limits when I'm like, I need water.
I understand that all too well.
Yeah. So I even think like going and even just watching to start, go along with it. If you, ask around, or someone could even go in the comments and reach out, to connect to where they could go watch. But even just trying to find somebody that's going and tag along and watch, just to like get curious, there was a group called Avance up in Washington, and they actually had it where they would have events like autocross, and people would change car. They would get in each other's cars, like and stuff. But they had like women's events where people that ladies who'd never driven anything, and they're just like showing up in pretty much their commuter. As long
Yeah.
as it met all the tech guidelines of being generally safe, they could go out there. And it was so fun to see my sister go out and just like, oh yeah, like I love this. You just see this light come on in people when they get a little taste of going fast and learning to like control all this power. I think it's very intoxicating. And even here, we don't have a road course nearby us here in Idaho, but we're just a few minutes from the drag strip, and we were just there the other night. And there's people in like stock pickup trucks racing each other. So I'm like, there's always an outlet, some
Yeah.
way or another. If you're like just even a little bit curious to try, there's lots of resources and places you can go.
Yeah, that's a great point. I definitely should have said that too. Because I mean, I did a lot of that too. I would just go to events and experience and watch it and get motivated. And
Hmm.
then like the drag nights, I love. Yeah, I was a big drag racer. It went to nationals and all that in Alabama, Florida when I was out in the Panhandle. I got big into it, the bracket racing stuff, because I mean it was right next to the house. It was what was there, and um, definitely going to it and watching it helps out and to really inspire. There's no doubt about that. I mean, so yeah, that should be probably your step one. I mean, I remember some of the funnest times I had when you go with friends, and especially when I was like, when you'd have a couple beverages and whatnot, and you're just hanging out, and we started doing side bets on which car is going to win. It, it's fun to do that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's well, that's the cheapest way to be in the motorsports is watching
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah, no doubt.
But it is, yeah, I think there's people that are probably curious, but they're like, oh, I couldn't do that. And I think there's actually more accessible resources, like you said, like starting with autocross or going and doing stuff like that is
Yeah,
actually more accessible than people think it is. You don't have to have like a $500,000 car for that. There are lots of people on the spectrum out there putting their cars through the paces. So I just say if someone's curious, they can reach out and comment or message me or, even connect with you if you have resources too. So um, I was trying to think, I want to make sure and ask you, whoops, about my favorite question. So, what is obviously motorsports? Is there anything else that you feel like you experience joy around in your life?
oh yeah, no, absolutely. So again, being that kind of multi-tool guy, I mean, anything that can give me a sense of pride and joy. Like, I mean, my animals, that they're a huge moving factor for me, right? Taking care of them. I actually cook for them and, give them, real good quality food. And it's changed the dynamic with, my whole interaction with them and everything I do. So, very in tune with my animals. That's one thing. But, bikes, skateboards, I used a downhill mountain bike as well. That honestly was I did a semi pro race in Hawaii one time, and it was like the craziest thing I've ever done. Is like jumping off of a 12-foot drop, into a landing over a street type deal. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was it, it was it
No.
was exhilarating. I loved it, but it scared the hell out of me, and that was. I don't really do it too much anymore naturally, but after having a back surgery, I actually went last year with um, Jessica's cousin's boyfriend. There's this amazing trail system all around Laguna Hills in Southern California. They're like fire roads, go up these towers, but they're well groomed and like hiking, walking, and downhill biking trails. I could barely get myself walking the bike up to the top of the hill. I was like just so spent, back was just like hard to, get straight back up. So, I mean, I was barely able to push through the whole experience. I mean, they were having to stop and wait for me all the time because I was just in pain trying to do it anymore, which is pretty heartbreaking, but I was at least able to still do it to some degree. I just had to take a lot of breaks. But there's a lot of things. I love taking trips. I love going to get recentered by the ocean. going for drives. Um, there's so much. Like my mood's changed with the seasons. Like I like to do things as the seasons change. Because for me, if I stay doing the same stuff all the time, I absolutely lose my mind. I can't. That's why I struggled at some points in my career. Is like once I got rank in the military and they started wanting to be a desk manager for the most part. At least when I wasn't deployed, I struggled. Having to be on a computer all day doing the same stuff. Like I was like, look, I got to do more training programs. I need to be face to face with people. I need to move and do a meeting in this building, a meeting in that building, because complacency I found was or being too routine, doing the same thing over and over all the time. You get used to it, you take it for granted, you lose your passion, you can't stay relevant with any kind of positive attitude typically. So yeah, that's for me. It's like you always got to find a way to make things better, change the situation, add new components to it, maximize the experience for everybody else. Like I've always been like a people pleaser. I find a lot of passion in that, honestly, like helping people out. I guess that's a big thing that I've missed in all this is that, basically anything you can do to help other people from your experiences, because I've had a lot of them, to this point in my life, a lot more than I think most people would have done just because of everything I put myself into, from going overseas so many times, being stationed in South Korea and in Afghan for almost a year. They change you when you see how different people live, how different people do things. All right. So anytime I come off a plane, I land on a different type of ground, or I see a different aspect, a different climate, just going to the beach. I take it all in. I'll literally, put the sand in my hands and just watch it float away. Because in the last few years, I've been having friends, I've been having families just pass away, for all sorts of different reasons. Another racing friend of mine, he was just having his like 48th birthday dinner, had a stroke at dinner in front of his family, and passed. No reason, just happened.
Oh my gosh.
It's like
You just don't know. And we never know how long we have. And I think that's a big part of why I make the choices that I do too in my life, because I want to live in a way that, like, if I'm gone tomorrow, I'm not going to have regrets. My filter is like, if I'm 80, am I going to wish I had done that? That's like my filter question. Like, if I am on my deathbed and I'm 80, if I'm like, oh, I wish I had done that, then that's like automatic. Yes, I better do it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it changed for me, like everything, continuously seeing people in all sorts of different ages and stuff. I had a military friend of mine. I haven't talked to him yet, but just saw honestly this morning that his 18-year-old, like I think he's his sister's kid, died in a vehicle accident. 18. It's basically the same age as my son. It's absolutely heartbreaking. To see all this stuff happen and how fast and easy it happens. And I've darn near done it myself a couple times. So yeah, it changes you, and at least it's changed me significantly. Make me want to be the best version I can for my fiance, for my son. I'm about to have a little daughter here, in August as well. Quite the age gap there. My son's about to be 19 this month, and about to have a little girl here. But I'll tell you, that was
brand new.
The fact that that we're experiencing this and having a kid together is honestly making us young at heart again and re-energizing us. Like, some people are like, oh, I don't think I could ever do it again. Like, I'm so excited to go through this again because it's keeping me young, and it's an absolute blessing, from some of the stuff we've had happen to us, to still be able to have, a child and everything. So it's brought me back to life, and it took about 5 years of going from rock bottom, though, after the COVID time period, and losing my other best friend, Brandon Waller, who was the guy who got me into Ducatis in 2010 back in Hawaii. It was a struggle with those. I even went riding his bike around for about a month around Florida and Georgia and other areas, just trying to figure out what life is anymore. What am I going to do next? So I just took off on the motorcycle with a backpack and literally drove all around. on his Ducati, just kind of getting lost after all that. Yeah, I don't know.
Just putting that one foot in front of the other. You think it's just making that choice to keep moving?
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is individually. You got to find what it is that you've learned through life that you want to put yourself in. Where do you want to be at when you're, 30, 40, 50, you got to set goals for those timelines and try to get yourself there. And obviously things happen and that you can pivot that, but as long as you're still working towards something that you feel is going to bring you the most happiness, so you're the best version of yourself around your family. Because, I had a couple, period of time where I was just so down that it really weighed heavy on my kid, and my loved ones around me, and nobody could really bring me back. I had to do that on my own, but it put my son through a phase too, because I was in a phase. And that's one thing I think I wish I would have gotten out of that sooner, and when it had such an impact on him, because there was about a 2-year period where I was an absolute mess and just trying to figure things out. And it was hard to keep him there too, especially as he started going through some things with puberty and acne and things like that. Homeschool after COVID, not being around people, so he went through some hard stuff with me, and then we both kind of fell into a slump. We were just kind of going through the motions to figure out how to put ourselves in a better area. And, I figured that all out. I just wish I would have done that sooner.
Yeah. But you did it. That's what counts. That's what counts. And I see how you are in a space where you're doing things that you love again, and you're aware. And just even coming here and sharing some of your story, like, I feel like that helps other people know that they can be down in that spot, and that it doesn't mean that's how it has to be forever. Things can be different for them too. So I think it takes courage to share your story, especially when you've got some slumps in there, or some really challenging trauma or things that have happened, and still choosing to like wake up the next day. That's courage in itself sometimes, to choose to wake up the next day. So I commend you for that. And I really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. And I just think, like, I appreciate your service, but I also want to say your service in that, like, showing up as you and genuine, and leading with your heart in all areas of your life, like showing up at your job with your heart. I appreciate that about you too. So that's why I felt like I connected with you so quickly. So I just want to thank you for
Likewise.
all of your service.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. The only other thing you kind of talked on it was, like, I asked people what their own personal definition of joy is. That's usually the last question I ask. So do you have a personal definition of joy?
Personal definition. Well, sometimes I feel like the definition of joy is by getting the joy within the others. Inherently, for me, brings out the joy within me. Everybody's obviously different. I think for me, though, it's trying to find a way to always make those around you feel happy, feel that they know you're genuine, that you're passionate, that you're doing things to make them better, and also inherently making yourself better in the process. That's what I've always strived with whenever I'm helping other people, because it makes me better.
Yeah.
I find a lot of joy in that, and that can be just from doing simple house tasks, having a sense of completion, somebody making a comment. I do believe people need a lot more consistent commenting in positive manners, because most of the time when people are doing good, we're just kind of like, okay, that's what they should be doing. We don't really say nothing. Say, hey, or giving them a compliment. But as soon as they do something bad, we're definitely going to let them know. And, and that makes it really tough. And that's what I think really drives people to stay kind of negative all the time. So I definitely recommend trying to compliment people more, on anything they're doing, even if it seems routine and they did something that was cool within that moment or that you noticed, compliment them, you know,
Heck yeah.
uh, try to spread more positive energy like that because there's a lot of people that aren't able to do that. And you can be in the best work environment, best job, dream job like mine. And you can have, a negative condescending attitude and think you're, somebody that's never had any accountability, and they can absolutely ruin it and spoil things and be a poison amongst the realm with the most amazing job ever. So whatever you
Mhm.
could think of, whatever the most amazing job is for you, and you put one or two, people that are kind of negative in those arenas, and they can really drive things bad. So
Yeah.
that's why if you can just compliment, people can compliment more and not just hone in on bad qualities and bad things. Try to find the positives. If they have a negative, find two positives for that negative to override.
Mhm.
That's I try really hard to do that, and it's something that's been significantly helping me.
Yeah. You guys did a really good job of that at the school too. Like there was a lot more praise than like, there's that encouragement, like, oh, I saw you did that, one really that line, you did a really good job on that line. It's like, oh, okay, thank you. Like I think we all thrive when we're receiving that praise over criticism. If it's weighted, yes, let's be open to to critiques and tips and stuff. But I agree that like if we can give more praise, they even say that like with kids, like in parenting books, like it should be like 10 to 1. It should be 10 positives to 1 negative, like of, so they hear the message positive more often than they're feeling that they're being criticized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. Big time. Yeah, there's definitely some other driving schools and stuff. We had a guy just came in. He's like, I went to this BMW class about a year ago, and they were just dogging on people, like, you're doing that wrong. Like being real aggressive with them. And it made him like really tentative and like nervous,
Yeah.
and he did worse ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never didn't even want to do another driving experience. Was very very hesitant to come to this place, and it completely
Oh,
changed the experience. He actually stood up and did a speech about this in front of the class. It
that's
was wild
cool.
to see.
That's awesome. See, you never know how you're making a difference. So when you show up and you're purposely bringing some positivity, like it totally makes sense because it's the joy and that is contagious.
It is. It
Yeah.
really is. It's something I
Yeah.
just thought about that I thought would have been cool. It's like if I made some kind of like journal log of every class and cool moments within all of them, because it's easy to forget things, right? Especially if you have a heavy rotation of changes every couple of days, like I do.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
already finding it like, Jesus, who was this really cool person I just met a couple classes ago last week? Gee, I'm like, because
Yeah.
you're meeting so many new people and remembering them days, and then you have to like reset and do it again a little bit. So I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
already finding myself like, dang, 3 months in, and I'm already forgetting a lot of things. So I need to
Love
start
the
jotting these all down so I can share these because they're good
heck
learning
yeah.
moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Have to start your success journal or your brag book or
You need to do something. I mean, yeah, it's tough to sit there and write stuff, but man, I tell you, once you do force yourself to do some deep thinking like that, it'll only benefit you.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I have a practice around that as well. And I also do like an end of year one that I do a bunch of exercises to reflect on the past year and then set my intentions for what I want the year ahead to look like and experience.
That's
Um,
a
so that when I look back the next year, I'm like, yep, nailed it. The things I intended, I did do that. And so then it's like, okay, now I get to pat myself on the back because I showed up for myself this year. So it is a powerful tool for
absolutely, of
reflection stuff. So, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for your time and joining
course.
my podcast today and sharing your story. And I will just, anybody who's listening, if you feel like this will be helpful to somebody else to hear this story and understand that resilience is possible for all of us, you can certainly share and like or subscribe to the channel. So I just want to thank you for joining and see you next week.